It's been a while that we talked about Infinideity Cradle, and I think it's time to wrap up this set with some nice, cheap, budget-friendly options for players that are looking for something easy, cheap, and most importantly, fun.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Infinideity Cradle was a set that gave us a lot of new playstyles and mechanics. Astral Planes for Genesis, Evo Decoy Token for Nubatama, front manipulation with Nova Grappler, and a more aggressive Angel Feathers. Usually the new mechanics are locked behind a more expensive price tag, however this set provides us with some cheap alternatives that allows us to still play with these new additions. You know the rules behind these videos. No VRs, a focus on being playable and around the latest support, and of course our budget is around $50. But most important of them all to remember is that prices are relative. We begin the video with the big boy Genesis. Genesis got a brand new mechanic with the whole Astral Plane and Valkyrian duo. And surprisingly, we can build a solid Valkyrian deck for super cheap, and it's a really easy to build one thanks to the fact that we have the trial deck that includes all the basic essentials. So the following list is basically a trial deck plus build. Thanks to the trial deck, this upgrade build costs somewhere around 20 bucks. The price tag can vary a bit depending on how much a trial deck costs at your local game store. It should be the cost of a trial deck plus an extra 5 bucks for the remaining cards. The list has one main boss unit, and that is Uranus and Valkyrian. Your main grade 3 is of course Uranus, as without him you can't open the Astral Plane, making this deck quite considerably weaker. He also is your main force marker generator. In the support role we have Neptunus of Pristine Flows. He can help us to get to our oh so important number of 5 force markers. However, don't overextend with his ability, as you will leave yourself defenseless if you go overboard. His power up skill gives you the option to go in with 3 powerful attacks. Your Vanguard, Valkyrian, and himself makes for a very effective final turn push. Battle Maiden Mutsuki is here for a fast-paced early game and to also help us to achieve Valkyrian as fast as possible. After turn 2, she becomes a perfect discard fodder for Neptunus, but can also be discarded for the grade 1 PG for guarding, or with the Vanguard skill if you have multiple copies in hand. Prometheus of Dancing Light gives us deck manipulation, so increase our early game pressure with the inclusion of 11 crits. It also gives our soul for our various soul blessing abilities, and to top it all off, it allows us to hit with high powered column thanks to the free power it distributes. Ulixius is a great consistency card as it generates a lot of soul and it helps with drawing into our key pieces, making it an overall solid support card that will do its magic in any scenario. Atlas of Heavenly Sphere is one of our key engine pieces. It allows us to generate soul, dig deeper towards our pieces, and most importantly, it makes a force marker, helping us to achieve that important goal a little bit faster. Diana of Moonlight is another force marker generator, but this card gives us some unique pressure, as this card can help us generate it in the early game. This, as a Vanguard booster, can force way more guard from your opponent a lot sooner to prevent the ball from rolling. This in turn can make your 11 crits even more valuable, as there is a better chance to break through someone's 1 to pass guard. Once we get 5 force markers, we also need to get Valkyrian, and that is where Deputized Bear comes into play. This card helps us to get our main unit to hand and allows us to keep reusing him turn after turn. This deck has 2 game plans that run next to each other. First off, you want to get to 5 force markers as fast as possible. That is possible thanks to Uranus, Neptunus, Mutsuki, Atlas, and Diana. But at the same time, you want to build up as much soul as possible. This can be done with Prometheus, Ulixius, Atlas, Valkyrian, and just by normal rewriting. This isn't just to fuel your various marker generator skills, but mainly for Neptunus. This way, the moment you go into Valkyrian and you push your opponent to 4 or 5 damage, you can swing in with 3 super powerful attacks. And if you have another Neptunus in the other column, then potentially it can be 4 strong attacks. Here are some general tips and tricks to achieve these scenarios. Use Diana as a Vanguard booster. This will force extra guard from your opponent. They are forced to overguard, but if they don't have a heal trigger or a PG, it's basically a 1 to pass. Meaning you can get some nice extra value if you hit those triggers in the early game, as usually they go to waste, as typically everyone says no guard in those stages. Try Mulligan for a Mutsuki, as its usefulness window is very small, but after that moment it's a perfect discard discard fodder for your various skills, making some decisions a lot easier. If you have a Neptunus and a Uranus in hand, but can't generate an astral plane on turn 3, then write into Neptunus first and go into Uranus the following turn, so you aren't stuck on Uranus without a way to achieve 5 force markers. This way you can at least have 4 force markers the moment you go into Uranus turn 4 if you have used Neptunus' ability. Also, if you know you can't make 5 force markers on your first grade 3 turn, but you know you can make them no problem the next turn, and in actuality you can even make more, then place the first marker you gain by normal riding on the rearguard column. This way you can apply way more pressure as you would otherwise, as that 1 force marker gives much more value on a low powered column than on a Vanguard column that's already going to swing in for 63k. So if you can afford it, place your normal on-ride markers somewhere else. Next up we have Angel Feathers. This is a clan still in its early stages, as we don't have the biggest card pool to work with, especially with the fact that the support is divided into different playstyles. So this list is far from ideal, but as soon as the new support is on the horizon, this could be a base for a potential strong budget deck that will utilize the offensive nature of Protect 2. This Angel Feather deck costs around $25, with most of its value lying in the 2 triple Rs and Sim Shield. These cards most likely will be more useful once new support drops, so this could be a good investment for when that happens. You don't have a main Vanguard unit, as both grade 3s are generic beaters with guard restrict on top of them. Sim Shield is a faster unit that can swing in hard and has the upside that it can be used turn after turn, as you don't need to Soul Blast your grade 3s. Feather Palace on the other hand can be a much bigger pressure tool and can actually swing for game much easier, but the only problem is that it's much slower and you can't do it turn after turn as you remove your resources. Freezing Grantor can be a solid beater and control option for the deck. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that this is the only card that can forcefully activate some of your abilities that works with cards in your opponent's damage zone. Meaning you want to save him primarily for the moment your opponent is at 5 damage, as at that point some of your skills won't activate anymore unless you use him. Hygienist Angel is one of your main attackers and it rewards aggressive playstyles as it only gets stronger. Thermometry Angel is another solid 14k beater that will create a nice 22k column and in some scenarios will make 27k columns, which can push for game pretty fast, especially coming right out of turn 1. Helpful Intendant is a great first ride target as it gives you a nice +1 and can help pressure you for damage, as it can be a solid 30k booster or attacker if you lack the necessary grade 2s. Marking Celestial Arab Haki helps us with some consistency as it allows us to fetch any card from a damage zone. This helps us to always build a nice solid aggressive board. It also gives our Thermometry Angel another 5k buff. The final card of this build is Dispense Angel. This is a solid 17k booster. This gives our columns a pretty good power buff as it makes it possible to hit 30 to 40k numbers. This build is a very aggressive protect deck that is a bit different than a fully built version of this deck. You always want to have 3 possible attacks to pressure your opponent. You have multiple skills that make your unit stronger once a new card goes into the opponent's damage zone. But here is where the difference lies between the two decks. Where the VR version of this deck has the VR and Freezing Grantor to keep shoving units into your opponent's damage zone to forcefully activate the various abilities, this deck takes a different approach. You can see all these abilities as a turn white on hit effect. The moment your opponent takes a damage, you can empower your columns. The only issue is that once your opponent is at 5 damage, your deck shuts down. This is why we run Freezing Grantor, as he can extend our value for a couple of turns, so save him for those scenarios. But be careful with him as he uses Soul, and we only have a limited resources of Soul, as seen as your grade 3s need grade 3s and Soul as well. Armed with that information, you want to pressure as soon as possible to win the game as fast as possible. To do this, you want to always swing with your Vanguard first, boosted by a generic unit like Arab Haki. Your opponent needs to either forcefully hard guard the attack to prevent the other columns from becoming stronger, or take a gamble with a 1 to 2 to pass. Just like the Genesis build, this gives early triggers much more value. Also, by nature of this deck, defensive triggers are less effective as your columns will increase in such scenarios as well. When using Feather Palace, you need to be wary of the consequences, as 1, you won't be using one for another 2 turns if those were the only grade 3s in your soul, and 2, Sim Shield will also be inactive in such a scenario, so be careful when using Feather Palace. A perfectly timed one can give you games, but a bad one can potentially cost you the game. As stated, this is a very bare bone deck as we lack the general support which most clans have access to. But with the upcoming support wave, we might be able to upgrade this deck to a more powerful version of itself. The next deck is a brand new Nubatama deck. In a previous set, we couldn't build a new Nubatama budget deck as since we only had 5 new cards in that set. And the build before that had a focus on Kuchikira Kongo's discard and guard restrict mechanic. This time around, we have a more stall-focused strategy that focuses on creating Evoid decoy tokens for free shield value in combination with Protect 2, and at the same time have enough tricks up our sleeve to steal games before our opponent's eyes. This Nubatama deck costs around $25, from which almost all the value lies in the Zangetsu playset, meaning this deck is as cheap as you can get your Zangetsu playset. This deck's finisher is Sure Stealth Dragon Fuzen Kongo. This card is your late game card to close games when your opponent is at 5 or at 4 when you get a potential crit. Your main support grade 3 is Gamigubo. This card allows you to go the distance and have a much better survival rate as it just generates free shield out of nowhere. The final grade 3 is Voidmaster. This card is just here to fill the grade 3 slots so we have more right targets besides Fuzen Kongo, as ideally you want to save 2 or maybe even 3 Fuzen Kongos for late game and use them in one turn so you can potentially push your opponent from 3 to 6. For the grade 2 spots we have Oboro Sakura. This is a Night Beater and a Soul Charger, so it fuels our Gamigubo but can also randomly Soul Charge a grade 3. This is also the reason why we run a bit more grade 3s to increase the chance of this happening. Next up we have Giant Jin, another beater that also gives us resources which can fuel other skills that helps us generate more soul or even power or tokens. The final grade 2 is Zangetsu. This card gives us some early game pressure, generating more tokens, but also activate our other 2 grade 2s as it can create the perfect conditions. In the grade 1 slots we have Tsumichi Basho. This grade 1 helps us to generate strong powerful attacks or to just rip out shield value from our opponent's hand. Incidentally, because it is a slower stall deck, this card can even help us win through deck out as we force our opponents to draw cards. Our main game plans all focuses on soul, so we need a solid way to keep generating an almost endless supply. And that is possible thanks to Aogita. This can help us build up soul almost from turn 1 if the conditions are right. The last card of this build is Tataribue. This is just a solid beater and also an excellent going second right target. The main strategy of this deck is to stall the game for as long as possible, and you can achieve this thanks to the help of Gamigubo and the token generation. With the help of Protect 2, you can generate free 15k shield each and every single turn, and the turn after that you can increase that number to 30k shield, etc, etc. This is possible thanks to your different soul charging skills. However, stalling isn't the only thing this deck does, as you want to apply some pressure so the moment you are at 5 damage, you can kill them with multiple Fuzen Kongo attacks. You can enable this thanks to your multiple beaters. Another thing to keep in mind is the fact that more and more decks start to go faster through their deck, either by aggressive cycles, draw skills, or extra drive checks. You can use this to your advantage with Tsumichi Basho, as you can almost be a second mill mega colony, and in some extent in even better version, as you can easily mill your opponent for 2 cards every single turn for the entirety of the game. The only downside is, unlike megas, your opponent gets the card to hand, meaning you effectively give them a free cycle, which can be dangerous. So you need to time this right. The best scenario is after you both went into your main plays, as that means they already have what they need, meaning the cycle won't help them effectively and in some cases can make it worse, seeing as you can generate a lot of power at the same time. If you want to upgrade the deck and have a bit more survivability, you can change 4 crits for the draw PGs, as they are around $20 for a playset, making the deck around the $50 mark. The last deck is an interesting Nova Grappler deck that utilizes the front mechanic to achieve multiple restands, but at the same time utilizing rearguard drive checking abilities to empower an old card. This Nova Grappler deck costs around $30, where the value lies in the 2 RRR front trigger units. The main boss unit of this deck is Sword Trooper Equitis, where Godhand Dragon just wants to increase the power with drive checking fronts. This unit wants to hit front so it can restand all of your units. Ideally, this is your second right target so you can resend upwards of 4 units. Your backup unit is Ashura Kaiser. This is a great first right target as it can give you free restands, and if we combine it with Gain X2, no matter what your drive checks, unless it's a heal or a grade 1, you're going to get an extra attack. The support grade 3 is Power Trooper Sync. This card works perfectly with both main grade 3s. During your Equitas turn, you increase the chance of hitting front triggers, and during an Ashura Kaiser turn, you can potentially get an extra attack off, as Ashura's restand ability also works with rearguards that drive check. Fusing Striker as well as Silver Fist are here mainly to help with Equitas, as 1 on the field means hitting 1 front trigger will get every front row unit to hit over the 20k threshold, allowing them to be able to restand off of his ability. Fever Rocketeer is a solid versatile card that can hit most Vanguards and can be a solid interceptor. Up against Excellent Protect, it can hit unboosted, meaning you can save the boost for when you restand it with Equitas. Gain X2 is here to interact during your grade 2 turn and first grade 3 turn, as well as the late game where you don't have extra counterblast available to you. This way you can still generate a bit more attacks when hitting fronts. Grid Bangle allows us to get our front triggers when we need them. This can be perfect on the first attack during an Ashura Kaiser turn with Sing, but it also helps us to consistently push for our finishing combo attacks with Equitas. Lastly, we have exclusive mechanic Strogeni. This is another solid attacker as it can be a strong unit in the front row when hitting a front, but it can also function as a booster during the second attack of your 12k attackers. This build is a very straightforward one. You want to hit your fronts to apply pressure against your opponent. Ideally, you want to go into Ashura Kaiser and follow it up with Equitas once you have enough pieces or circles to apply a finishing blow. Ashura Kaiser together with Sing can be a deadly combo as it allows for potential 3 free restands. And because it's divided over 2 attacks, you can easily turn every restand into an extra attack. And if you have a Gain X2 on the board, you can easily dish out 5 to 7 attacks on a consistent basis, as you will generate more attacks when hitting a grade 2, grade 3 and even a front trigger. When using Equitas, it's important to wait for the right moment. Because you activate it at the end of the battle, you can wait for the moment your opponent didn't hit a defensive trigger, or at the very least not enough to make a difference. It's important that you learn when the right moment is, because your counterblast is limited and using 2 counterblasts can be very costly. That's why you ideally want to go into Ashura Kaiser first, as by the time you go into Equitas, you have 2 extra circles, meaning a potential for extra attacks. And that was the last budget deck for Infinideity Cradle. This set was quite unique in terms of the budget options, as most of the decks could still access the new mechanic, which the main build focuses around. Also, this set decks are quite a bit cheaper than the previous sets, which is also a good sign. Of the 4 decks, I believe the Nubatama jumps out the most, as it has surprisingly a lot of options and on paper has ways to combat current top tier decks, like some Axel decks and even Riviere, as it can focus on a 0 damage playstyle against Riviere and then go for the deck out strategy. But I leave that to you guys to experience and experiment with these decks and see how far you can take them. And that wraps up this budget video for Infinideity Cradle. I know it's pretty late in terms of release of this video, so I'm gonna jump right into the videos for the Mysterious Fortune extra booster set for Great Nature, Neo Nectar and Gold Paladin, so we start trying to catch up with the releases. But keep in mind, these times are very hectic with all the extra news and information that's coming out with all the new releases, as there are a bunch of other videos that I wanted to make with all the extra stuff that was leaked and revealed during the product livestream, like the information about the trial decks, the upcoming next stage booster sets, and all the other crazy stuff coming afterwards. And you guys know of the whole Road to Next Stage series that I'm also doing on the channel. So I tried to do these older videos in between those type of videos whenever I got the chance, and probably this week I'm gonna do a bunch of Mysterious Fortune videos, and I hope at the end of this weekend we can dive into the deck profiles of that set, and then the week after that wrap up that set and dive directly into the Melody and Bermuda Triangle set, so we can make waves towards the more current sets like the whole Vanquishers and Claret Sword support. And if I happen to do some wonders, maybe get on time with the whole upcoming Gear Chronicle Rebellion support set that's in a couple of weeks due times in Japan. So Probably not, but I'm gonna try my best. And that's basically every update that I want to clarify for you guys for what's happening on the channel. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely Patreons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel and everything that's happening on the channel, then head over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!